guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited to have you here. Today I'm going to recap for you how my last event went at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. As y'all know, I did 3 Bassmaster Opens this year. This is my first year doing anything like this. I kind of just wanted to get a feel for what tournament bass fishing was like, and I figured going all in was the best way to kind of figure it out. I gave it a real honest effort, and that, that's what I wanted from the start, is to give this the best chance at giving me a full picture of what tournament fishing could be. I had my first tournament in February at Lake Ouachita, my second one in early May at Logan Martin in Alabama, and my third event that I just got home from was Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. So this third event was very interesting, and we're going to talk about why here in just a minute, but I just wanted to share with you guys that this is going to be a quick recap video, and then maybe in a few days down the line, when I'm able to collect all of my thoughts a little better, I can kind of talk about the overall picture, what I learned about tournament fishing, what I learned about being a co-angler, mistakes I made early on, things I adjusted going forward, things like that. So for now, we'll just handle the recap, and then in a few days' time, maybe I can put together something for any other people out there who are maybe considering being a co-angler but don't know what it's like or what it's about. I can kind of help answer those questions. If you have any questions about being a tournament angler on the co-angler side, drop them in the comments and I can look through them and then answer them when I get around to filming that video real soon. But without further ado, let's talk about what happened at Lake Eufaula. On morning number 1, I was paired with boater Bobby Bakewell. He was an awesome guy to talk to. We were boat number 195 out of 195. And so while takeoff was at 6 a.m., it took us quite a while to get around to our turn to go. Once we finally got on the water, the first thing I noticed was just how muddy this water was. The next thing I noticed was that this lake had more white bass in it than I've ever seen in my life. Every other cast, you were reeling in a white bass. They were popping up everywhere. I think in total, by the end of the day, I had caught upwards of 15 white bass and about 5 largemouth bass. The real bummer of it all was that each of my largemouth bass was 13.5 inches long. They were all almost identical to each other. But the problem with that is that the limit for a scoreable legal bass was 14 inches. And so I was just short time after time after time. And it was really interesting, the mental aspect of having to be so close and yet so far at the same time and have to just keep going, because this is an incredibly long day. We were on the water from 6 a.m. until 4:10 p.m. It was about 10 hours of just fishing and trying to get something together in the boat. Having said all that, it was at least an entertaining day, because it wasn't like I got 5 bites all day and it was like a grind to get them. I was catching fish fairly frequently, in fact. It just wasn't the right species and it wasn't the right size. After getting poked by the 4th white bass, I just stopped trying to bring them in the boat at all. I just used my pliers to get them off and back in the water as quickly as possible. Another interesting thing about this day is that it didn't seem to matter what I threw. Whatever I threw, I was getting bit on, whether it be a Texas rig, Carolina rig, crankbait, chatterbait, drop shot, rattle trap, whatever. I threw it all and I would get bit, and so it was so hard to make decisions, because no matter what I threw, I'd find something. It was just a matter of making it the right size and the right species, and ultimately on this day, I don't think I ever got it put together. Ultimately, I wasn't able to bring anything to the scales that day. So day 1 was really interesting. It both felt like a lot happened and not a lot happened at the same time. I had a lot of time that day to kind of think about the mental aspect of tournament fishing, where part of you is getting a little discouraged while the other half of you is trying to make adjustments, trying to figure things out just to, continue putting the pieces of the puzzle together to hopefully get something in the boat to take to weigh in and this and that. So it was a good day for me to really work my brain, if that makes sense. Before we jump into day 2, I have a little side story. Day 2 almost didn't happen for me, and here's why. I am a little scatterbrained when I'm nervous, and in the morning of the event, I was a little anxious, waiting for things to get going. I had everything in my car. I had my life jacket, my rods, my lunch, my tackle bag, all of that stuff. My boater gets to the boat launch, I hop out of my truck, I get my tackle bag, my lunch, my rods, and I'm on my way to meet him. I get in his boat. We're one of the first couple boats out. We're boat number 14. And so I'm getting all my stuff put away in the boat, and I'm getting my rods organized, and I'm making sure I have this ready and that ready. And we're right about to take off when I realize I left my life jacket in my truck. And we were so close to getting ready to go, and I started to freak out because without a life jacket, you're not competing. And I didn't want to hold up my boater either, because that's not fair to him that I made a mistake. So I was running through my brain trying to figure out how I could possibly get all the way back to my truck to get my life jacket, to get back in time. Bottom line is it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to be able to get to my car and back before boat 14 was called to go. So I turned to my boater and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I don't have my life jacket. I forgot it in my truck. If you'd like, you can drop me off on the bank and I'll just get my stuff out of your boat so you can go. I didn't want him to have to wait for me. It's just not fair to ask him to do that. And thank goodness he pulled a spare life jacket out of his boat. I cannot express to you, if you were scatterbrained at all like I am, to have a checklist, because I knew I needed it, and it was even in my truck, and I just left it because I was my brain was going 100 miles an hour in a different direction. And even though it was sitting in the seat right next to my bag, right next to my lunch, I just didn't grab it. And that could have been a disaster, because my day 2 was so much better than my day 1. And you know, a lot of things could have changed just because I forgot my life jackets. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about how day 2 actually went down.
So on day 2, I was partnered with Kay.fishing, who, as I just told you, saved my fishing day. Without him, I would not have been able to compete. We were boat number 14, took off fairly close to 6 a.m., and we started strong immediately with the white bass. And then within 15 minutes, Kay caught a pretty decent 3-pound fish. The morning was off to a great start. But then it didn't take too long for the day to kind of turn back in to the day I had yesterday. The main difference is that Kay was fishing in much clearer, cleaner water than I was fishing with Bobby the day before, and so I had a few key changes to make as far as lure selection went, but otherwise, it was a lot of junk fishing again. I was trying a lot of different combinations of things to try to curate a bite. On day 2, we were also fishing a lot deeper water than I was the day before, and so I had to make some small adjustments there to get my baits a little deeper in the water column. But ultimately, it was pretty similar to my first day, where I was catching so many white bass. I also caught a few crappie and some really aggressive bluegill. The funny thing is, I never hooked any of the bluegill. They would just bite my lure and not let go, and I'd get them all the way to the boat and have to pull them off my lure, but they never were hooked. They were just so upset with my bait that they were just hanging on for dear life. But anyway, all day I caught white bass, crappie, aggressive bluegill, but I only caught 1 bass during the entire day. And if I was going to only catch 1 largemouth, I am so glad it was this one. I wish I was able to get a video of the actual catch, but my GoPro was overheating. It was so hot out here. But come about 10 a.m., I hooked into a 5-pound, 2-ounce beauty of a largemouth that I was able to bring to the boat and ultimately take to the scales later that day. Take a look at that fish in there, taking up so much of the box. When I hooked that fish, it pulled drag and it jumped all over the place, and it was taking me for a ride, and I was getting nervous, but my pal rods held up, my Daiwa reels held up, and Kay was a great hype man. He helped me get it in the boat. He helped me get my picture with it. He took the weight for me. He was so excited. I was so excited. I was shaking there for a minute, so I needed to sit down for just a second, kind of recollect my thoughts before I got back to it. But man, if I only had 1 largemouth bite, I am so glad it was that one and I was able to get it to the boat. I caught it on a Texas rig just throwing off the back of the boat, and apparently there was a little hump out there in the water that I didn't know about. I just got really lucky with the placement of that cast, but what an awesome time that was. I, for the rest of the day, kind of alternated doing more things out deep, throwing Carolina rigs, throwing Texas rigs, throwing drop shots, doing, slower things that I thought would get bit. Also, between the combination of really sharp white bass teeth and rocks around this lake, I spent a good majority of my day just retying lures if I felt like my line was frayed at all, because I was so afraid that I was going to lose another decent fish just because I had a little fray in my line. So the rest of my day came and went. Another largemouth never came, and so when about 1:50 rolled around, Kyoya and I headed in for our weigh-in at 2 p.m. So for the last time this year, I got to walk across the stage and talk with Hank and tell him about my fish, how I caught it, and got to show it off for just a minute and get my picture taken. It was a really great time. At this point in time, I was only like the fourth or fifth co-angler up on the stage. Hank told me that this was the big bass for the day, and I just had to hold on. I just had to wait and see if that held up. And thankfully, a few hours later, I checked back in again, and in fact, this was the big bass of the day. So what a way to end it for me, with a big bass on my last event.
So that sums it up. My day 2 turned everything around. It's still hard for me to believe that one fish jumped me up the way it did. I guess that speaks a lot about how tough the fishing was at this fishery at this point in time. My one fish was a game changer. I had an absolute blast. Looking back, going across all 3 tournaments, I went from being something like 58th in my first tournament with one fish to being in 31st place at my second event with 5 fish out of 6 total. I was short one fish on my first day, to being in 29th in this event, and with a big bass bonus. So like, what a first year I've had doing this. I've taken away so much good information. I've just learned so much as a person and as an angler. It's been an incredible, incredible ride. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I still have a lot of thinking to do about what my next steps will be. For me personally, I've never caught a smallmouth, and I'm dying to. I really want to catch a smallmouth. So part of me wants to try doing one of these northern state events one of these years. Maybe next year I'll give it a try. I've really not been up north at all, so it would be a learning curve and a life experience I've never had. So that would be a lot of fun. But here in the next video, I'll kind of talk more about what being a co-angler is like and how to prepare for being a co-angler and stuff like that. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thank y'all for hanging with me for this series of videos. I mean, I started this back in like January when I first announced that I was gonna give this a try, and I had no idea how it was gonna go, and I didn't have any idea how it would be received, but y'all have been nothing short of so amazing and so supportive, and I am a very incredibly lucky person to have so many people in my corner. My family has been beyond supportive, and my friends have been in my corner since the start, and I've had amazing companies like Pal Rods, Bill Lewis, Yamamoto Baits, Gill, Different Baits, Fish Tackle and Marine, all who were cheering me on and doing everything they could to help me push forward and keep trying new things. I'm just so lucky to have all of these people rooting for me and wishing for, you know, the best for me, and I am so keenly aware of how lucky I am. I'm so hopeful to keep doing something similar to this going forward, and I hope y'all stick around for the ride. We'll see where this takes me. You know, it's been a very fun year, and I'm really excited to see what's coming up next for me. Thank y'all again, and I'll see you real soon.